Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Oscar's Cozy Corner. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. I've been wanting to experiment with some smaller builds in Dreamlight Valley for a while now, so I thought we'd try something new, which I'm calling pocket builds. The idea of pocket builds is basically to create smaller, more contained builds within a limited footprint and some sort of constraint to work within. So rather than taking over an entire biome, we're going to be taking one little space and seeing what we can actually do with it. For this first one, I'm taking some inspiration from this week's premium shop. We've got all of those new Frederickson Manor items, which I haven't actually picked up myself, but I really do love that grand country estate sort of style. So instead of using those items this week, I thought we could take that theme and create our own little formal garden using items that I already have. I've given myself a little 12 by 12 square of pathing to work within, and I think it's going to be quite fun. There's a nice little design that I think we're going to come out with at the end. So let's just get straight into it. Before we start, I've pulled out some of the items that I think could match this kind of formal garden style that I'm going for, in the vein of what we see with the Frederickson Manor. So there's a lot of stone items here. A lot of these are just Scrooge based, so they're not all premium shop, which is nice. Although there is the elusive Storybook Vale fence back there, so I do apologize if you don't have that one. You could replace it with another type of fence, but as you can see, I love putting a mood board down initially just to get a sense of these items together, and straight away you'll get an idea of whether they work or not. And right now I think this palette is working for us. So if we hop on up into build mode, you can see that I have a little 12 by 12 footprint right here, and what I'm going to do straight away is I'm just going to fill all of this space in. I left the border just to give us an idea of what kind of space we're working with, but I think it'd be really fun with pocket builds to try different shapes, different sizes. I just like the idea of doing smaller builds that could be lifted and placed really anywhere in your valley in different themes. I think that could be a lot of fun. So now that we've got this down, the first thing that I'm going to work on is the very centerpiece, because I just want this to feel like a small little formal rose garden type vibe. So I'm going to place this lovely little stone fountain right in the middle here. What I am going to do is I'm actually going to take away the middle section of the path, and we're just going to place that in right there. And then I think what we can do is we could bring in perhaps some of the river kit. Now, I do like using the individual river pieces alongside these ones, so the actual pool of water, but because I kind of want this to have a lip on it this time, I'm going to use these pieces instead that do have that, I guess it's a ridge on the edge. I know that there's some rocks in these, so it looks a little bit repetitive, but it does add a little bit of texture to the build as well. So what we're going to do, we're just going to place one of those on each side, just like this, so we can do one over here as well. And then another little one right about there. Then we can grab our centerpieces and just fill in those gaps. And immediately, we've then got this kind of sunken area because it's almost raised. And we have this sunken area around the fountain, which I actually think is really adorable. So off the back of that, what we're then going to do is we're actually going to put some of these elegant Edwardian fences around the base. We'll fit them in wherever we can, but we'll have to have one on the corners as well. So it looks as though we just need 4 around here. And the nice thing about these is they just butt right up against the edge of the water, so it kind of hides it. And then, of course, it adds those regal elements in with some of that wrought iron and that lovely kind of like white marble brick. I really love that. And then if we grab the corner piece, I do wish that we had a one single tile version of this that didn't have the flourishes on either side, but we make do with what we have. It has to stick out just a little bit, so we're going to do that. We're going to move that into each corner, just like that. And then we've already got our centerpiece, so that was really easy. It was just a handful of items. We've got the fountain, the river kit, and then the little fence running around the edge. So I think that already looks super cute. Now I know that I would like some roses kind of on the edges of these fences. So what we're going to do, we're just going to delete some of the path from here. So we've got these 4 little areas, these 4, I guess, flower beds. What I did notice is just underneath that one, we left that tile. So I'm just going to not get rid of the path like that. We're going to grab it from the inside and we're just going to remove that single amount of tile that's just left underneath there. And we can place that back so it doesn't show through the water. Now I have some rose bushes here. I picked the white ones. You could use whatever color flower you like. Anything that's a 2x2 should fit. I just really like the idea of having kind of like a formal rose garden. And we're going to place those down just running along this bed. So I'm going to take it, I'm going to rotate it, and we're just going to drop that in all the way across. If you've watched my builds before, you've seen that I use rotation quite a lot, and that's primarily to just break up the monotonous pattern that some of the items can make. So if I just do this for this section, but then if I bring a rose over here and we just keep them all exactly the same way, at least to me, I spot that pattern immediately and it just kind of bugs me. I like having a little bit of variation because at the end of the day, rose bushes or whatever you're using typically is not going to sit the same way. They're not all going to grow the same way. So I just think throwing a couple of rotations of those items down just mixes it up, makes it feel a little bit more natural as you can kind of get in this game anyway. So we'll finish off this side just like this, and then our final one just in there like that. And then we have a lovely formal rose flower bed running around the outside of this fountain. So I think that looks really, really good. The next thing that I'm thinking is let's use some of these lovely stone benches, but in the corners. So I'm thinking let's put it right in the corner, but then bring it in by 1 tile. Now this is going to be quite a symmetrical build. 1, I love symmetry. 2, I think these formal gardens really do call for that sort of symmetry anyway. If you go to kind of like country estates or anything like that, they're definitely built on that formality and on that symmetry. So I think having a nice aesthetic and a nice kind of like split between these items, having them all face each other, really leans into that, which I love. So let's place one of those on each corner, and then we can grab this little stone doormat, I believe it's called, and then we can rotate this and we'll see it actually fits in between the base of this beautifully. But I am going to move it back just slightly, so I'm just going to grab it with the group mode and we're going to move it just slightly back so it sits underneath the lip of that. It's just a personal preference. I think it looks a little bit better that way rather than having kind of like that empty border running around the edge. It works both ways, but just for me, I think having it tucked under ever so slightly just makes it feel as though they kind of belong together. So we're going to do the same again down here. We're going to bring it in. We're going to rotate. We're going to pop that down. We are 1 tile out there, so let's move that back. And then we can do the same thing then on this side. So let's do 1, 2. So we've got our corner pieces down. We've got our nice seating arrangements. The formality is already coming together. So I think let's work on the entrances, because I wanted this to be like a walkthrough. So I've got this, I believe this was a Monsters Inc. Star Path item from that kind of Valentine's Day Star Path we had. So we're going to place one of these down on this side, and then we're going to place one down rotated right on the other side, just 1 tile in from the border. And what we'll do is we'll use this as our walkway. So you could pick this build up, drop it into your valley in a little space. It just takes a square, and nicely it all fits in a preset. So if you did build this, you could throw it into a preset, take it into the valley, and be away. That's why I really like these presets, because you can try builds out maybe on a floating island, take them into the valley, see if they work, and then you go from there. But behind those benches, I think we're going to grab this elegant stone fence. Now, I've not officially used this in a build yet, so this is the first time I'm really using it since I managed to pick this up. And we're just going to put that right on the edges behind there. And we're going to take this corner out. And I tell you why we'll take this corner out, because I think a tree would be quite nice in this area. So if we move those little stone benches or those stone fences across ever so slightly, I think that they could sit just like that. We might even... No, you know what? I actually think that's quite cute. So we're going to do that again on each side. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take off the corners, because I want a little tree in that section. And I just kind of like having just a bit more visual interest with the path. And then we're going to bring this in, and we're going to have it sit on the same place each side. So just over the middle of that bordered section. So that gives us a reference point every single time. So we're going to do that. We're going to bring that in. And the nice thing about having the four corners the same is that they all look neat, and it's really easy to finish that up. I've just realized that I've come out too far with those, so I'm just going to bring this across. I was saying it finishes up neat. Look, I can't even follow my own rules. Let's bring it across by one, just for a little bit more of a gap on this corner section. There we go. That one's correct. Perfect. So we've got those little like cubby areas where they're nice and protected by the fence. So I think what we'll do now is we'll bring in some of the bigger columns, and we're just going to place these down in some formation that works, or how you would typically see these in a formal build, which is quite often multiple of them. So when I say multiple, I mean in each corner you often have more than one. I wish there was a way to connect them outside of the stone fence. That would be wonderful. Like across the top, it would be so cool if we could run string lights or something like that. But you'll see that I've rotated these. I didn't make a note of that. I rotate these primarily because I like the flat edge to be flat against the edge of the path, rather than it being kind of off center or skew-if or anything like that. I like the edge being flat, which means when you take it to a different side, for example, this side, it's on the diamond edge. So you just need to rotate it a couple of times to get that flat edge again. And then that means you can take one from side to side, because you know that those two sides are matching and are flat. So let's place that down round about there. I think that looks really nice. Part of me is wondering if this area is a little bit too tight and a little bit too close together. So we could bring these back down, these fences, just like that towards the edge. And then I was wondering if we move that away just by one tile, or whether we can get away with it being in the corner. I think we can get away with it being in the corner, but what we'll do is we'll just nudge these out by one, just so they're a little closer to that border, just like that. And then we can bring these columns out by one tile as well on each end. So let's do that and that. I'm just going to move those ones in a little bit. And there we go. Very pretty. I like how that looks. So you can see what I mean about the columns, but what I love about a big item like this is it brings in some verticality, it brings in some interesting height as well. So a build for me is all about having different textures, different heights, different variations, some movement, all of those sorts of things just really make a build feel fleshed out, in my opinion. So what we're going to do now is I'm thinking for the sides, we can get rid maybe of some of the path around here, and we can create almost another bed, another flower bed type thing. I wonder if we move those out, would I be able to? Let's see. Let's grab this really large. No, let's grab this spiral cypress tree. And again, with the rotations, because I want it to fill out more of the width here. So you can see that there's two variations of this really with the rotation. You've got one version where it's wider, one version where it's thinner, depending on where you place it. So I'm going to grab what I consider the wider version. I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to do a full rotation on it, just so it has a little bit more variation. And then we're going to grab, I think, the plaza tree, and we're going to bring that and we're going to place it right in the middle, just like that. So it just gives, again, more height, but then a dip in the middle. It gives us some different colors, which I think is really cool. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do that the same on this side. Do the plaza one right in the middle. I'm going to grab one cypress, two cypress. Now I know that it's kind of creeping over the edge of the path. I wish that it wouldn't do that, but you know, we roll with it. We see how it goes. But I think what we could do to kind of alleviate that is we could bring in some of these fences and just have these running really across the front. Now we can only fit 3 in, which is fine. We'll just move that across. Because to be perfectly honest, we could have left the path there. I just don't really love how it gives a circle around some of these trees. So we'll work with that. I think that looks good. So we're gonna rotate this on the other side. Do a full rotation, bring that in, and then we can align that to the space. Just bring it across by 1. And that looks adorable. We're then going to bring in, I think, some of the... I don't think we're going to use these statues. I was looking at them, but really they don't have the height or anything that I'm kind of looking for. I guess they look okay behind the seat. I actually quite like the lion being behind the seat. But I was wondering whether we could use these nice big cypress trees in those areas. And it looks as though the lion's going to kind of get in the way, because I would rather have the cypress tree in that corner, just like that. So I think I'm going to stick with the cypress tree. And we're going to rotate that so it's kind of on a diagonal. So it feels a little bit wider. And then we're going to bring that across. Get rid of this lion. Move that into that space. So they're kind of opposites, I guess, now. And then we can bring this one down into this corner, and we can bring this one down into this corner. Now we've got a real... I was going to call it a thoroughfare, but it's not a thoroughfare. It's a bit more elegant than a thoroughfare. However, it's a really beautiful seating area that I think looks fantastic. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab these little pots. I just love the gold with the flowers on these. I believe these are from the Ariel signature bundle. So we're going to place those down just to bring in a little touch of gold. And I think that we can use those on every column. But again, just a rotation call out. You can see that I've got the leg facing out. When I come over here, I want that leg to be facing out. So what I do is I just come around each one, or on each side, and I just rotate it until it lines up with that white line. And that just adds a little bit of warmth and a little bit of color to the build. I don't know. I'm looking at that stone fence and I'm looking at this little end cap we have, and I'm thinking, can I fit this in on the end? But I don't think that we can. Not unless we went one back, kind of like that, which would mean maybe the fence has to come one back. I do kind of like that. I know we're ever so slightly outside of our grid, but you know what? It's my game. I make the rules. but then when I do that, unfortunately, it comes over the front of this pillar. So do we move this across just to make it fit? So if we come across by 1, Or do we even come across by 2? And it really just contains that tree by itself. I think that looks even better. So that's what we're going to do. I'm just going to get rid of these ones because this is a great chance to show you the preset. So if we grab the group mode and then we select all of this, we've now got that whole section as a preset. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save it as a preset, but we're going to get rid of one. So I'm just going to get rid of the first one on my list. And we're just going to do it as corner, because when you use a symmetrical build like this, if we save this, it will take a little second to save just because we've done a lot of work. That's something I should remember to do. But if we come back into furniture mode, I can get rid of these ones for now. And I know it seems counterproductive because we've just added them. However, because we're using the preset, if I jump into presets and I pick the corner, I can just do one rotation on that. And we can really fit this in wherever we want. But we know that roundabout, where are we? Roundabout here is where it needs to be. So the tree is just on the corner like that. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to grab it. I'm going to rotate it. And we're just going to drop it in for the corner. We're going to do 1, 2. And then we've got that lovely self-contained area with those gorgeous fences. Very, very regal. Very pretty. And to finish this off, I'm thinking we might add maybe some of these flower petals. I placed both the purple and the white down, as you can see, primarily because there's pink on here, there's some pink on the shrubs, but I think maybe for around the fountain, if that's where we wanted to use these, we could do something like that. We could bring that in to this space, just like that. Maybe another one round about here. And we can just have those petals kind of around the fountain just for a little bit of texture. Of course, you could, if you wanted to, put them on the path. You could have them running wherever you like. I mean, we could have them just under the trees out the back. No, we can't, because they can't go under those trees. So it looks like the middle is where they're going to stay. It looks like the middle is where they're going to stay. And then finally, maybe we do bring the lions in. And perhaps we just place them kind of just off the 2 entrances like that. Now, I don't know whether we should bring that path out by maybe 1. But I don't think so. In fact, part of me is thinking... No, part of me is thinking that the lions look cute. So let's just do the lions. Let's stick with the lions. We're going to have them in those gaps. It's going to be 1 off the border. And then we'll just bring that across by 1. Make sure it's all lined up. Where are you? You're in line with the edge of... We're 1 off. 1 off. There we go. There we go. Does part of me want to bring in the flowers on the outside too? No, because I think we're getting a little bit complicated then. But we might just be able to do the little plumeria path just underneath these, just to tie it together as a final kind of send off for this build. So let's do that. And that's it. That is a little pocket build done in real time with some of my thoughts behind it. So there we go. I think I'm going to leave this one here. I actually really love how this turned out. It's obviously a much smaller build than what I'd usually do on the channel, but I think we've managed to get quite a lot into a relatively small space without it feeling too crowded or over-designed. I really liked the challenge also of taking the theme from this week's premium shop and seeing what I could make with items that I already had instead. So it still has that really grand formal garden feel that I wanted without needing any of those Frederickson items, which I think is a real bonus. But let me know what you think of this slightly different style of decorating video. Did you enjoy it? I'm definitely interested in doing some more pocket builds and playing around with these different themes, footprints, constraints, and all of that good stuff. But with all that being said, I'm going to leave it there for today. I will catch you in the next one, my friends, and I will, of course, see you in the valley.